So this is Silicon Valley Engineering Leadership Community, where the relationships last longer than the jobs. And we started this off a long time ago when it was part of SD forum called the Software Engineering Management Special Interest Group. But now it is Silicon Valley Engineering Leadership Community. And now we have these leadership academies every month before our keynote in the evening. Yes, mute yourself when you're not talking. Turn on your video. If you have it, find the chat, say hello, chat to everybody or chat privately. Gallery view allows you to see everybody. So upper right, speaker view will switch to whoever's making the most noise. Add your location to your name if you don't mind doing that. And then we have today, I think Ron, maybe you can introduce this gentleman after Chris Sims gives his talk. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing that and let Chris Sims do his sponsorship. He's kindly sponsored us for some time this year, and since we don't have any expenses for food and drinks, we gave him an extra month, so he's sponsoring now and later. So Chris, thank you for your sponsorship.
Happy to do it. And yeah, I've been hanging around this group since way back when. I've gotten a lot of value from being a participant, and so I very much appreciate the opportunity to give a little bit back and be a sponsor. And for those who don't know me, I'm the founder of Agile Learning Labs. We do Scrum training and coaching. And a couple of resources I want to drop on you. I'm going to drop them into the chat. The first is an article I wrote a while back about the role of managers in large-scale Scrum. And that seemed appropriate for this group. So I'm dropping that in the chat. Ooh, except it just went to Kimberly. How about I tried to send it to everybody? There we go. And the second resource I want to drop on you is a free offer to get some free consulting and coaching every Monday from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, at least as long as all this coronavirus stuff goes on. I'm going to be doing a free office hour on Zoom, and I'm posting a link in the chat for how you can take advantage of that offer. So basically, just follow the link, and I'm using Meetup to just kind of manage who is signed up, and that way I can send out the Zoom link in a relatively secure way to the attendees. And that's your opportunity every Monday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. to ask whatever questions you want, get some free coaching and consulting. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over. Thanks for the opportunity to sponsor and support the group.
Okay, so I think it's being passed to me to introduce Vidal. Is that right? Okay, Kimberly, thank you. So I want to point out, just before I do that, a couple of things. One is that somebody requested the Silicon Valley Engineering Leadership Community's YouTube channel, and so I pasted that into the chat just above where Chris pasted his two URLs. So you're going to find a bunch of resources all together right there. So that should be useful to all of you. I want to introduce Vidal. I actually met him for the first time at the Silicon Valley Engineering Leadership Community back in May of 2017. He was considering setting up a mastermind group at the time. He already had a website for managers with wonderful, full, rich set of resources for managers. He had been interviewing managers all over the world, actually, and putting together a series of a whole website of interviews with managers all over the world. He has collected a bunch of those and published them as a book. He's since then also published a book specifically on interviewing managers. So Vidal, correct? Shake your head, yes. That's out as of last week, something like that. I'll let him say more about that. He has been at Walmart Labs, at actually a bunch of companies, Autodesk, Uber, God, I can't name all the places you've been at, Vidal. You've been at a really wonderful set of places both to contribute and to learn. And so with that, let me turn it over to Vidal for the next hour.
Thanks, Ron. I really appreciate it. It's a great honor to speak here to this group and share what I've learned. So let me share my screen with my slides. Share. Can you all see my slide deck?
Yes.
Good. All right, great. So I'll start off. So whoops, I'm in the wrong window here. Clicked on the wrong button. So I'm going to talk tonight about the engineering manager interview. So this is a huge topic, and I'm only going to be able to scratch the very small part of it. There's also coding and design interviews, which are part of this. There's the question of how do you get the interviews? How do you make a good impression? We won't really have time to cover those here due to time. We're going to focus more on some tactics and strategies for answering engineering management questions. I want to say, like, the engineering manager interview can be difficult, surprisingly difficult. It's very time consuming. It can be stressful, frustrating, full of disappointment at times. So what I want to try to share with you tonight is stuff to make it a little easier for you. So again, the format is I'm going to go over some real life questions that I was asked when I interviewed for an engineering manager. Then we'll have some breakout sessions. I think those will be really great for people to share and practice these questions and what their best experiences are. Then we'll kind of wrap up. What I'm going to share is, you know, what I believe some good answers are. I'm not saying these are the best answers to these questions. You definitely may have better answers to the questions. You all have a lot more collective experience as engineering leaders than I do. And it's not like I aced all these interviews either, but I think I did learn a few things along the way, and I'll point out some mistakes that I made and some things that you shouldn't say. So I'll share some of that with you, so hopefully you can avoid those mistakes. Again, I'll go over some of these things just to warm up things before we go to the breakouts. So continuing along, oops, if I click in the right window, it would help. So as Ron said, I'm currently an engineering manager at LinkedIn. And previously I was at Uber, Autodesk, and Walmart Labs. And I went through this cycle myself of interviewing as an engineering manager when I moved to these different companies. And I learned a lot along the way. So I'm going to try to share that with you. It's primarily from the candidate's perspective. You know, I have interviewed engineering managers too, but mainly what I'm sharing tonight is from the candidate's perspective. So if you're looking for a job, you know, I know a lot of people, you know, with COVID-19 and all that, you know, maybe looking for jobs. Hopefully this will help you. I am personally on a mission to improve engineering management. I think being a good manager is a lot harder than most people think. So it's great that organizations like this one, SVELC, and other ones exist. And so I also created my own website, Managers Club, where I share resources to help managers learn and improve and be inspired by listening to interviews of other engineering managers and the things that they've gone through. And finally, yes, I just wrote a book on this topic. I had a blog post on my site about popular questions that I got when I went through the engineering manager interview. And it was my most popular blog post by far. And people like go every day there to read these questions. So I put together a book where I try to expand on that some. So I self-published that a couple weeks ago. You can pick it up at Amazon or Gumroad if you want. Moving on, I'm going to give just first some general points I believe that are good about answering these kind of management questions, okay? First thing I think is you have to think before you answer the question, why are they really asking this question? Sometimes the question on the surface may seem to be asking one thing, but they're really trying to get at something else. So I think you should keep this in mind, and I'll try to give some examples of where I think that comes into play as I go through some sample questions. I think you should also focus on always selling yourself and what you can bring to this opportunity, because no matter how impressive your achievements were in the past, okay, you're not actually being hired based on that. You're being hired on what the interviewers believe you can bring to this opportunity in the future. So you need to kind of position and sell yourself as to what you're bringing, okay, rather than all the great stuff you did in the past, because that's not really so interesting. Another point I would say, in all your answers, you should try to focus on your accomplishment and impacts, like over the details. So when I, when I'm interviewing and people ask me about things, I focus, for example, at Walmart, I had a team and we increased the conversion rate by 5%. And we, drove so many millions of dollars of revenue, because people are interested in those things more than like, I had a team of, 14 plus 2 engineers and we did these kind of things. Yes, of course, that's important, but what was the business impact? What metrics did you drive? I think it's very important to have these available to share, okay? A lot of the questions you'll encounter are behavioral questions. They all start with things like, tell me about a time you blank, blank, blank did something, right? So it's good to have a story for those. I think it's useful to have at least 2 different versions of these stories, because it could be that one of them might not resonate with the interviewers that you have. So you can try different versions of these behavioral questions. We'll go over a few of them in my examples, but there's like lists of them you can get, and I have them on my website, a big list of them. A common technique that people recommend, which I think is good, is what's called the STAR method. So situation, task, action, and result for answering these questions. So I'll give an example, okay, of how I might answer a question like this. So a situation I might have encountered is, when I took over my team, I noticed that they took way too long to do designs and user experience studies. Okay, I have a front-end engineering team, and that was the situation. So my task was to ensure that the team could carry out their work and increase their velocity and deliver on the commitment. So that's an example of a task. So what action did I take? So I set up training on design and best practices, because I knew the team didn't lack that. I set up design reviews. I brought designers and outside resources to develop the team. So that's part of the action I took. And so what was the result? The team learned best practices about design. They got faster, they got better. The customers were more satisfied. We drove certain metrics up. So that'd be an example of like a STAR kind of answer. So try to focus things. I think this is a good framework whenever you answer one of these questions, to kind of tee it up like that. I'll say just a couple more things about when you're answering these questions. I think one is to kind of give the Disney version of the story, right? The story where things worked out, where things were good, avoid messy details, and avoid like some irrelevant details that might be interesting but might get you totally sidetracked and off topic. So I'll give an example of this. So I would be asked about, tell me a time you had to manage a low performer, okay? And so I had this story, I have a couple of them. One of them was about this person who I hired into my team who was a referral, right? He was a referral, and then he was on the job and started to encounter difficulties and headwinds, and then what I started to do to help recover this person. Well, I thought it was kind of interesting, that detail that he was a referral, but that actually totally sidetracked me in like 2 interviews. So I stopped saying that, because a couple of hiring managers said to me, well, wait a minute. So he was a referral. So does that mean when someone's a referral, you don't check their background enough? When they're a referral, is that like a weakness in your interviewing process that you gave them a buy or something, And I was like, no, so that got totally sidetracked in this conversation. Like, do you vet the referral the same as vetting people who aren't referrals? Here I was trying to say like, it's good to get referrals, and I like referrals, and people on my team like my team so much they were giving me referrals. But in reality, it just opened up this whole door of like how my referral process maybe wasn't so great. So I just leave that detail out. It's like someone joined my team and they had this issue, and then we kind of talk about that so we stay on topic. So I think that's useful tip that I learned the hard way. I'll give you one more thing, which is sometimes you don't have a story, especially when you're starting out as an engineering leader. Maybe you just don't have a story. And someone says, tell me about a time you had to manage high performer. Tell me a time you had this kind of conflict, or this, your manager disagreed with you or something, or you disagreed with them. So a very short reply ever to the effect like, I don't know, or that never happened to me. Like, that's really not a good answer, okay? Now, I wouldn't make up a story, but if you don't have a story, here's a couple of things you could try, okay? You could say, you know, assuming you saw another manager deal with this situation, maybe your manager or another manager you work with, a similar situation, you could say, well, okay, this hasn't exactly happened to me, but here's what I've seen, and this is how I would handle it based on that experience, okay? Say that hasn't happened. You know, there are a lot of blogs and books on engineering management, like Ron has an excellent book on engineering management. So if you've read these books, you could say, well, you know, I haven't run into this situation myself, but if I were to, based on what I've learned and what I've read, and I understand the best practices, this is how I would tackle it, okay? And this would be my approach to solve it. And I think that's a much better answer than something to the effect, well, you know, I don't know, and that never happened to me. That's like never good. So that requires like preparation and research, especially if you're new. I'll go on to like some general question. Again, just kind of examples to kind of tee it up before we go into the breakout. So very common question, always, you know, usually to start off an interview is, you know, tell me about yourself, okay? So, so why are they asking me to tell me about yourself, okay? Maybe they didn't read my resume. You know, sometimes people come in the resume room, the interview room, and they don't even have time to read the resume, right? So they want you to summarize it. Maybe the resume wasn't clear. Maybe it's an innocent conversation starter, okay? But I think you have to think like, why are they asking me to tell me about myself, okay? So this is an easy one because you could have a well-prepared elevator pitch, okay? This is a question you should have a very well-prepared answer for, okay? Now, what the interviewer is not asking you to do is rehash your entire resume, right? You shouldn't say, well, you know, I grew up in Miami. I say I grew up in Miami, right? And then I went to college here, and then my first job was this thing, and then my second job was this thing, and my third job. No, they're not asking you to rehash your entire resume when you say, tell me about yourself, right? They want to kind of get an interpretation of your resume and what they should take away from it. So I think you should keep it pretty short. And I recommend actually starting in reverse chronological order. So start with the most recent position you had, summarize it, and maybe go back the last 2 or 3 positions. And your aim there is to leave the impression with the interviewer that you've progressed through different roles of greater and greater responsibility and achievement, okay? And I also think it's important to limit it to just the most recent experience, because in reality, that's what's going to be weighed most heavily. The stuff you did 10, 15 years ago is really going to be heavily discounted. People are really going to know, like, what did they do most recently in the last, say, 5 or 10 years? So again, focus it on that part. Time is limited. You don't want to bore the interviewer. And so I think that's important. I think also it's important there in your elevator pitch, you know, to talk things about your passions. Maybe you're very passionate about coaching and developing people, you know. So I like to say that I'm a product-oriented engineering leader. And so what I mean by that, I love creating products that delight people and leading teams that create customer-facing products. So that's why I'm interested in front-end engineering, mobile engineering. That's why I'm talking to you today about your position in front-end engineering or whatever you have, because I'm a good fit for this because that's what I'm about. So I think you kind of want to summarize that and let them know this is what I'm about and not get stuck in the details of what's exactly in the resume. Here's another very common question you might ask. Why are you interested in this opportunity? Okay. Why are they asking this? They're not really asking exactly why you're interested in the opportunity. What they're really asking is, what's important to you? Okay. By asking this question, what they're trying to understand is what is important to you about like what you want. So like a weak answer to this would be, well, you know, my friend works here and they said it's like a good place to work. Okay. Like I've said that doesn't work. That's not interesting. You know, the recruiter reached out to me and told me about this great opportunity and all that. Okay. Well, it's the recruiter's job to sell you. So that's a very passive answer. You know, like, I don't think those are really good answers to give. You know, a much better answer is how this aligns with your career goals and your passion, okay? How does it align with it? For example, again, I'm very passionate about engineering efficiency. So a job creating tools to improve engineering efficiency, that's great for me. And that's why I'm interested in this, okay? People want to hear that, okay? When I got my jobs at LinkedIn and Uber, these are products that I use a lot. So I use these products a lot before I even joined the company. So I could say I'm here because I'm very passionate about these products. I use them. Oh, the mission of your company, I love the mission. You're trying to create jobs for people, economic opportunity, educate people. Like, that's why I'm here. These are much better reasons to give than, you know, the former ones. So you want to show like excitement, but like really good, strong reasons why you're interested in the opportunity. That's what they want to hear and what's important to you. Here's another like classic one you can be asked, like, what are you not good at? Okay. And so at the surface, like, okay, what am I not good at? Sure. Maybe they're asking you to disqualify yourself, you know, maybe admit something that you're really not good at. So they can say, hi, I found what they're not good at. But what I think they're really asking here is a check of your self-awareness. Okay. What is your plan for self-improvement, self-development? You know, are you motivated to improve? Okay. So I think this is what you really want to say, is not just what you're not good at, but how self-aware are you and how can you improve yourself? Okay. I mean, I will say here too, I think, again, from candidates' perspective, purely, you must be careful what you answer here. You know, like a very bad answer would be something that you're not good at: planning, administration, giving hard feedback, firing people, you know, all these things which are core part of engineering manager job. Even if you're not that good at them, this is not something you should give up on this answer, okay? Because that would be really bad, okay? Neither should you try to be too clever, okay, and give some kind of, you know, cliche answer like, you know, what I'm not good at is, you know, setting boundaries because I work too hard, you know, I'm a perfectionist, you know, I don't have patience with low performers, you know, and stuff like that. Even if that's true, that doesn't sound legit. It sounds like you're trying to like not answer the question. And so you shouldn't say that either, okay? So what could you say, okay? I think the best way to answer this question is you should offer something which is, you know, not too terrible, you know, that you're aware of, okay, but that you also have a plan to improve, okay? So you could say, for example, like, I'm often called on to do PowerPoint presentations and I obsess over them, you know, a lot, and I spend way too much time on them. So now what I do is I time box, you know, and I do the 80-20 rule and stuff like that. So now it's like, okay, that was a limitation. It's not too terrible. And you have a plan to improve. Or I'm not very good at public speaking. You know, I'm nervous to speak in front of people. I really struggle with that. But you know what I've done is I go to Toastmasters now. I'm a member of Toastmasters, and this is helping me a lot, and I'm improving. So those are kind of more safe answers. They show a path to improvement. And I think those are much better things. I mean, you have to think about what your own thing is you're not good at. Maybe it's not whatever it is. But there should always be something that you have a path to improve. What is your management style? This is a very broad question that gets asked sometime and is very open-ended. So why are they asking what my management style is? Okay, so I think the reason they're asking this mainly is they're screening you to determine if your management approach is going to mesh well with what they believe and understand is how the organization works. You know, maybe the organization works in a very consensus-driven way or top-down driven way or some other way in that org. So they're trying to see, does this person, like, you know, gonna fit in there? Okay, and can they imagine you being able to work with the team and members of the team due to your management style? Okay, so this is so I would step back when I get this question. Like, I've thought about this question a lot. This is a tough question to answer, and I would say, so I think it's an opportunity to engage the interviewer in a discussion about management and show that you have a good grasp of it and that you're confident and you have a well thought out answer, but not immediately jump into any kind of details of your style. Because if you jump into the details, okay, you might not match what they're looking for. And right then you've kind of failed this question, right? They'll say, this person is not a match because they haven't, you know. So it's better to explain like what you think the purpose is. You know, the purpose is to help the team win, for example. Like I believe that being a manager is a lot like being the coach of a professional sports team, you know, and we're trying to get the right people on the team and train the team and win the game and all these kind of things. So if you can get them to agree as to the purpose of management and the goals of management, if you can get them nodding their head on that, then you can kind of start talking about what you do and how it fits into that. And it's going to be much more agreeable answer. And then finally, I would say, I would always add this caveat, which I think in general is true, but always to answer this kind of question, because they're trying to see like, will you fit with their style? Because their style might be very different, is to always acknowledge that one size all doesn't work for everyone, right? You have to adopt your management style to the people, the teams, and the situation, right? So you are flexible, you know, there's different management styles or different approaches to management, and you're not fixed in only one mode of operation. So I would say that. I'll give you another one. Tell me something that is not on your resume. Okay, so why are they asking me this question? Okay, I put everything on my resume, you should know, right? Like all the good stuff is there. So why are you asking this question, right? So I think what they're really asking is for you to impress them somehow. I want you to impress me with something. You know, they don't say it in those words, but I want you to impress me. But now you have to take your best informed guess as to what might impress them. Okay, I don't know. Have you done research on them? I think it's important before the interview, if you can, to look up all these people on, say, LinkedIn, and see like maybe you can get some idea of what might impress them. Okay. But you have to be careful with this question too, because if you're concerned about ageism or some kind of discrimination, you want to be careful what you give up here, you know? So just think carefully about it. Did you research them? I mean, great things you can talk about, you know, for example, maybe you compete in something, you know, competition is always good, right? I don't know what you compete in. Thoughtful activities, interesting, unique things you do that make you memorable and relatable so that you'll kind of stick in their mind like, okay, this is the person who has this unique ability. But again, you kind of have to be a little careful with this question, but how will you impress them? That's what they're really asking for. Kimberly, I just want to check on time because I could go a little more, but I know we want to do like the breakouts. Do we want to like?
Yeah, I'd love it if you would engage people in some interactivity at this point.
Okay.
So how about a breakout? Give us something to talk about and tell me how many rooms you want, how many different people per room, and I'll do it.
Let's see. I can see right now. How many people do we have on right now?
About 27.
Wow, that's great. I don't know. What do you think? 5 people per room, 4 people per room, something like that?
Actually, I think John has to do the breakouts. I don't have the ability.
You don't
So
have to
yeah, 3 or 4 people per room will be good.
All right, let's do 4 then. Can you split them up?
4
John?
people per room means divided by 26 people, that's about 6 rooms then.
Yes.
Give or take.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Automatic. So
Give us, Vidal, give us some instructions what we should talk about.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Let me skip ahead. Hold on. I had some more. Okay, so here, I'm going to post a link in the chat room. Okay.
Okay.
So this is a list of popular questions I collected on my website. So I kind of went over some, like you guys could talk about these questions and, you know, did you like these answers? Do you have better answers? How would you answer the question? But if you just want some other, other questions, then I'm going to post here in the chat if I can find it.
Go ahead, you say it and I'll type it. I'm a really fast typer.
What the hell is it? Well, it's a
Just say it,
long,
I'll type it.
it's a long link. Okay, I'm in Zoom. Okay, let me stop sharing for a second. Okay, here I see it. I go on the chat window. Here's a link if you don't have questions to ask, where I have like over 100 or 200 questions. You could kind of ask and you could kind of go through those and, you know, ask each other like how you'd answer this question. We could do that.
Okay, so discuss challenging interview questions. If you don't have questions, go to that link. And if you have any issues, please come back to the main room and we can help you out.
and how many minutes do we want this breakout to be?
My crazy dream is not 5 or 10, but like 8.
8.
I can set the timer. Yeah, the way it works is at 7 minutes, I click a button and then there's 1 minute left.
You have the power. Thank you.
So the group is going to come back, Vidal, with the most challenging question that people have been encountered.
Yes.
That sounds good. Sure.
Okay.
Talk about questions and what's a challenging question. Something they want to share with the group, you know?
Hey, Vidal,
All right.
so how this link is actually different from your book? This link, managersclub.com, this link is how is different from your book?
How is the link different from my book? So that's the original blog post I did. Like, the book has way more stuff in it than that. The book is kind of started based on that, but the book has these questions and a bunch of other questions and stuff.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I clicked the button and we'll go for the time limit. Okay, that's clicking now. Okay, so Kimberly, Bruce, myself. Bruce, you've been invited to join a room. I'm going to join room 1.
Oh, I guess we were the first ones back, John.
So it's the two of us again?
Wow, that seems strange.
Is it only our group who, okay.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yes, welcome back. So we'd like each group to maybe share for a minute or two, like what they.
Now, the breakout groups were numbered, and I believe I joined group 1, and I'm going to ask Sean to talk group 1.
Sure, I'm happy to. There were two, well, there was one main theme that came up, and that is the idea of conflicts, whether that be managing difficult situations or managing underperformers was also mentioned, but just dealing with conflicts in general, and the importance of having some pre-prepared stories for that. And we liked the idea of having Vidal's idea of having a couple of stories just in case. So dealing with conflict was the main one, but also dealing with some of the technical questions that do still come up in manager interviews, such as system design, was also mentioned as a secondary concern.
Breakout room 2, if you guys remember which number you were.
Haven't a clue.
Okay. Okay, breakout room 2 was, assuming it was the same as last time, yes. Okay, Bruce, Borden, Quan, Ron, and Stephen.
Oh, Stephen. Stephen, go with your question.
Steve Mitchell.
Yeah, I took this one from the website. What is the hardest lesson you have learned as an engineering manager?
That's the toughest one.
And we also thought the question, what about our product is broken or needs fixing? Is a could be a challenging and unprepared for question sometimes.
Okay, so breakout room 3 was David, Rowley, Scott, Sunil, Vidal, and good old Android.
David, you want to go? Share.
Sure. So we talked about a couple of things. One was a question that I sometimes ask, but also you can kind of turn it around and put yourself on the receiving end. But it's to ask, like, what has the company revealed about itself and about what's important to it based on the kinds of questions you've been asked. So sometimes I'll ask that of people that I'll interview, but you should be thinking in terms of like, what is important to these people? Why are they asking me this line of questioning, right? And trying to make sure that you are sort of anticipating their needs and maybe couching your answers in that context. The other area that we discussed was like, yes, you might have your narrative keyed up, ready to go, and you're looking for that trigger. It's like, okay, I've got something to say. I'm going to tell my story here, but you don't want to sort of run away with some monologue that takes on 30 minutes or something like that. And so how do you check yourself and make sure that you're not being tangential, that you're responding to them, but you're taking the opportunity to sort of tell your story.
All right. So breakout room 4, we got Doug in Mountain View, Eric in San Francisco, Hung Fong, and Senthil's iPhone. Okay. Who wants to speak for breakout room 4?
Senthil? Okay,
Yeah.
this is Senthil. Do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure, Hung. Yeah, I can talk. Yeah. Hi. So yeah, we talked about like one of the question, which is like, tell me about a time when you failed at work, and we pretty much like focused on like the different the stories which we could cover, like the possible stories, and also like we talked about apart from the like giving the story, also the key learnings, right? Like here when the interviewer asking for the failure, like the thing is like how much like we understood the root cause, the reason why we failed, and also like what is the corrective action you can do to avoid similar failure in the future, right? So maybe iterating that, and also the other like members talked about like having the waterfall versus the agile methodologies to track the project, finding the failure early. It would always help to like recover from this failures sooner than later. So yeah, this is the overall the summary of our discussion.
Thank you. Breakout room 5 was Ashok, Bell, and Tracy.
Yeah, so we talked through a couple of the questions with a bit of a focus on some of the potential gotchas, like you covered in the introduction. And so we talked about things like team size, how big a team are you comfortable managing, and how to communicate that in a way that admits self-awareness, but also is flattering as much as possible. And I like the question about how do you manage someone who's a smarter and better engineer than you. I don't know, Tracy or Ashok, want to add anything?
No, I'm good.
From a sec, yeah, I'm fine.
All right, and then finally there was breakout room 6 with Ivan, Kimberly, Rajiv, and Ricardo. Who's going to volunteer?
Oh, I think Ricardo volunteered. Thank you, Ricardo.
All right. Mute. Okay. So we talk about what are the challenges as a manager that we face, and we kind of were talking more about kind of answers, like how to deal with low performers engineers, what to do when you are facing with an interview and you don't know the answer. Somebody on our team says just fake it until you make it, since you kind of keep practicing as you go through more interviews. Yes, we talk about those kind of things, challenges, and in general.
Hard to fake it till you make it if you're an architect, that's for sure. But anyways, okay.
Well, I was told I must be faking it because I sure ain't making it.
Vidal, back to you.
All right, great. So I could go over a couple more questions. Let's see, I don't know if we have time, but.
We do, go for it.
Okay, so hopefully you're enjoying these. So let's see. How do you manage multiple requests to your team? How do you deal with competing priorities? Okay, so, all right. So totally bad answer here is anything that begins with like a sigh of like, oh, you know, because you see what they're really asking here is how do you deal with pressure and stress, okay, is what I believe. Because this happens all the time, right? Every engineering team has way more requests than they can handle. And that's a good thing, okay? So you should be like, yes, this happens all the time. This is normal and this is a good thing, okay? And so what do you want to talk about? They want to know, how do you prioritize? How can you step back and look at the big picture? Are you able to influence people, okay? You know, can you work things out with product managers and other managers that are asking you to do too much, okay? Bad answers here or weak answers fall into like escalating too quickly, you know, well, got too many requests, so we just escalated, you know, that's not really that powerful, okay? And again, things where, you know, we're just cut all the scope, you know, we tried to appease everyone. We did 50% of everything, you know, we, you know, tried to cut the baby in half. All these are really not good answers because they don't show, like anybody can do that, right? Anyone can be someone who appeases people or cut stuff. So I think the better answers are, again, positive. This is a normal thing. You know, how do you convince people? Do you have a framework for it? So for example, when I was at Walmart, I only had way too many requests from my team, but I focused everyone on the conversion rate, okay? We want to improve the conversion rate of this site. So any feature requests that came in, we talked with the product managers and we said, how is this going to move conversion rate, right? And unless they have a good answer for how it's going to improve conversion rate, then we can't really take that feature. And everyone agreed that that was the North Star. We had to improve conversion rate. So then what the engineering team could do was just look at the engineering effort for that story, right? You know, get the conversion rate, divide it by that, and we had a very clear number, which made it very easy to prioritize stuff, and everyone was on the same page. So having a framework for that, being able to say no to people with a smile on your face and get them to agree, those are the better answers to this line of questioning, I believe. Okay, let me go on to the next one. How have you managed low performers? Okay, this is a super popular question. Okay, got this a ton. Okay, why are they asking this question? Okay, because in their opinion, there might be low performers on the team. Okay, and they want to know you're going to be able to step in and deal with them effectively and compassionately. Or the interviewer knows, you know, that eventually every manager is going to face this, so they want to know you're prepared for it. Okay, so you should have a good framework for dealing with low performers. Okay, do you do 30, 60, 90-day plans? You know, when do you go with PIPs? You should prepare multiple stories about this. You know, I comment and say, I have a story. Which one do you want to hear? I have a story about when I was able to turn someone around. I have a story when I had to manage someone out. And, you know, inevitably what they say, well, I want to hear both, you know, whenever you offer that. So have both of those prepared, okay? So that's a very popular topic, but I'll give you one more tip. So I would leave out when this exactly happened, because I have a really good story about when I turned someone around, okay, who was a low performer, right? But again, it happened a while ago, okay? And when I told them when it was, then the interviewer got the bad impression that I wasn't very aggressive in managing out low performers because this story, you know, was too far in the past in their mind, you know? So I would just kind of leave out the dates of some of these stories if it's not really relevant, because I think it can just, you know, it's just kind of weird like that. So again, it's not a relevant detail like when it happened. In my opinion. So I would leave that out. That happened to me once. This question, somebody asked this. Someone in the breakouts, right, came up with this question. how have you managed high performers? This is a great question. This is a tricky question. I totally messed up this question like the first time, because on the one hand, it's like, great, okay, I have a high performer, great. Like, I don't have to, like, you know, do much. You know, I can focus all my time on the poor performers. No, that's not the right answer, okay? Like, doesn't take any effort to, you know, if you don't want to spend any effort with the high performers, like, you know, what do we need you to do? So no, the right answer there is you actually do want to spend a lot of time with high performers, because you can get more performance out of them. So what I actually have is a framework, which I came up with. I got it from someone else. I didn't come up with it, but, you know, kind of like the 4 quadrants. You look on the axis of people who have, you know, high potential, right? So there's low potential and high potential. And then on the other axis, they're like their achievements, right? So someone who's a high performer has high potential and high achievement, right? So they're really great. And you have this other bucket of people who are high potential, but they're underperforming, right? This is where you really want to spend a lot of your time to get those people to be high performers, followed by the time you spend on high performers, getting them coaches, mentors, you know, developing them, pushing them to do more, okay? This is kind of the kind of answer you want to give. I actually lost the job on this question because I didn't give a good answer to it, okay? And I remember it very clearly. So this is something you want to be prepared for, and just in general life, because you're going to have engineers who are better than you, to have a good answer for that.
So how the heck did you figure out why you lost that position? I'm rarely given any feedback on which question I did well or poor on. I can ask for it, right? I've never gotten that.
Yeah, so generally you don't get any feedback. You're flying blind, okay? But what I think is very important is to establish a very, very good relationship with your recruiter, right? And this is a recruiter that I had worked with, and I had a super good relationship with them. But even with that, it just so happened that I built such a rapport with this recruiter that they gave me this piece of data, okay? Okay, but mainly they won't give it to you. But I think it's very important to establish connection with recruiters. My daughter's actually a recruiter, but anyway, I think I understand recruiters a little bit, but anyway, I remember I didn't answer this question very well. And I got the feedback that you gave a kind of weak answer to this, okay? So I worked on this, you know, for myself, and also if I remember asked again. So, but I talk a little bit more like why people don't give good feedback. What you can do is you can do mock interviews. You can do things like these sessions here, where you talk to other people and kind of vet your answers and improve them. But in general, yeah, you don't get a lot of feedback. So that is a real challenge as a candidate. Absolutely. I got one more I'll share with you. This one is, do you have any questions for me? Okay, this is almost always asked at the end. Do you have any questions for me? So what are they really asking? Are they really asking, you know, questions for me? Well, kind of, but what they're really doing here is they are judging you and evaluating you on the questions you ask, okay? So you must ask something. You can, no question saying, you know, everybody else already answered my questions is a terrible answer, okay? Even if you're tired, you must ask something. And you can ask the same questions you already asked other people. That's fine. So what are things you can ask for, okay? Like, well, let me say, things you shouldn't ask about, obviously, because again, it signals what's important to you. You shouldn't ask about vacation policy, work-life balance, none of these things. These are very bad things to ask about, okay? If you only have 1 or 2 questions, you know, you can ask about things, what it takes to succeed in the organization, because that's good, because that shows you're interested in how to succeed, okay? So I like that. But I'll say one more thing before I answer that. This is like the one time in the interview usually where you have a little bit of time to speak, hopefully for a minute or two. So what I like to do is I like to thank the interviewer at that point. I say, you know, before I answer you, I just want to thank you for your time today. It's good talking with you. And I kind of recap a little bit like what I want them to take away from speaking with me, like my closing argument, right? Because maybe they asked me the whole time about something, but I want to make sure they know that I think I'm a good fit for this position because of X, Y, and Z that maybe they didn't hit on. So I kind of like do a little bit of a closing argument, only for like a minute or so. I don't want to drag it out, but I tell them that. And then I'll ask questions. If I don't have a specific question, I like to close with a question for them, which leaves them with a positive feeling. You want them to leave the interview with a positive feeling. So I say, like, if you have nothing else, like, what do you like most about working here? Or better, what has been your biggest success while working here? What is your proudest achievement at working at this company, right? Because now they're reflecting back on something very positive happened to them. They leave the room in like a positive state of mind. Or you could ask them, what distinguishes successful managers here? Other kinds of questions, you know, if I got the job and I was here for like a year or two, and then we met, what would be things that you would see me doing that would, you know, have made you think this was a success? Things that are like very positive. That's how I kind of like to close those out. So that's my guidance for this. Do you have any questions for me? Question, which is very important. Well, we have the breakouts. We could do another breakout. I don't know if there's time for that. And if not, I could just give some closing tips. I know we're almost at time though. Should I just give some closing tips?
Yeah, given that it's 6:25, I think.
Yeah.
Because coming up, we have the bio breaks starting just past 6:30, and we ramp up again around, or we start chatting around 10 to 7, right?
Sounds good. Well, all right. So just in conclusion, I hope you found this useful. You know, I wish you luck if you're looking for a job. It can be very stressful. It's difficult. It's not easy. I'll just give you some closing advice. You know, it's a numbers game, you know, and you will get better with it as you practice more and more. I think someone else said that. So my advice is actually do not interview at your favorite companies first. So you will have some companies that you really want to work for, maybe some top tier tech companies. Avoid the temptation to go there first. Like I've made that mistake. You'll be much better after you've gone to a bunch of other interviews and practice your answers, practice your techniques. So I would recommend that. You have to practice. You can prepare for a lot of these questions. Most of them you can prepare for. If you're really diligent, you can write out answers ahead of time to a lot of these. You could try to do mock interviews. That can be helpful because there you can actually get some feedback. And, you know, there's books and other resources that you can read too. So, you know, I wish you the best of luck if you're looking for a job. I know it can be difficult, and hopefully this information can benefit you in the future. I'll leave my contact info here if you want to reach out to me. That's my direct, you know, personal email. You know, you can connect with me on LinkedIn or my website, my Twitter feed, and I'll post these slides later, both on Speaker Deck and on my website at those URLs.
Awesome, Vidal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was great to speak with you, and it was an honor.